Once you're done with individual seed variety, or you're ready to change from corn to soybeans, or you have a little bit left over in your CCS tank at the end when you're ready to change to a new family farmer, what you're going to want to do is each one of these CCS tanks has 4 individual ports to open up to allow seed to flow out. This of course is empty, but if we were going to unload because we had some product left in the tank, take a 5-gallon bucket or a bag, hold it underneath the trap door, crack open this lever, pull it down, and it allows the seed to fall out and run right into your bucket or your bag. The key is, once you open each one of these individual ports, you can't shut them until the flow stops. Because of how it comes in and seals, there is no way of getting it to come back and seal if there's product flowing down. So you can hold it shut while somebody else gets another bag or another bucket or whatever with a 2-man operation. But if you open this, there's no way of shutting it until gravity stops the flow, and you can clean this seal and then shut it. You push it up and engage this little lever into this slot and slide it over center until it's locked and firmly in place. And do the same for all of them. If you want to take a sample out for whatever reason, you've got this little trap door which you can knock open, which only allows a little bit of product to flow out. So in that case, for whatever reason, you'd want to empty one side with a bucket to even out and fill the other side if one CCS tank is too full and the other one's empty already when you're getting close to the end of an individual variety, or from one family farmer to the next. Then you can hold a bucket under this little tiny trap door and you can allow as much as you want to flow out, and then you can push this door shut. So that's the only way you can let some amount flow without emptying until gravity stops the flow. Mounted on the steps on the back of the planter is your mini hopper pan. It's held on the bottom in this groove with this metal brace. At the top, it's in with a dog ear in this slot. To remove, you slide it forward and up till it disengages the ear up front, and it slides out within this groove inside the bracket here. So this dog ear engages with this slot and locks in place, upside down to keep the rain out. After receiving your mini hopper pan from the back of the planter on the steps, you're going to come to whichever unit you're starting with first to convert from corn to soybeans, and of course reverse the process for soybeans to corn if that ever comes up with different farm families we help. Come to the row unit. The first thing you're going to do is take off the plate that holds the vacuum pressure on. Again, grab the strap, pull it out and over, slide the housing to the side and down. This disengages the latch here on the back of the aluminum. Just kind of twist it up. It's flexible. Twist it out of the way so it's not hanging down in your way. After you have the vacuum housing out of the way, you have access to your seed plate. Take the pan you fetched, slide it in between the frame right next to the fertilizer tube and the frame, engage it in this narrow area here. Take the dog ear on the back part and engage it into one of the slots on the gauge wheel positioner. Snug in place. With one hand, you'll grab the back side of the drive, hold it firm. With your hand or with a plier, take one end of this locking mechanism, turn it counterclockwise. You'll turn it about almost a complete revolution till it comes to the disengaged spot. Now with your hand, you'll grab the outside of the seed plate, you'll pull it towards the outside, which allows all the seed to fall out from the mini hopper. Once you empty your CCS tanks, each mini hopper is going to be full of seed still. So when you pull the plate off, the seed's going to fall. Take your plate, to keep it safe from getting scratched, set it up on top of the inner plant or up on the frame out of the way. Preferably with a plier or a screwdriver, or if you have gloves on your hands to not make contact with the seed, clean out all the rest of the seed from the edge of the mini hopper. Gravity will empty the mini hopper. There shouldn't be any up here. It'll all run out. Clean the area down here where it seals. Get all the kernels in the pan. When you're finished, disengage the pan and you can dispose of it or dump it back in the bag for the farmer to use later. Right now you're looking at the inside. Right down here is where the mini hopper empties into. The plate is missing, but if you can imagine, the seed is all laying down in here. The plate's all the way around. The seed is gathered into the mini hopper, held tight to the plate with the vacuum pressure, comes up and around in a clockwise fashion as we see it, comes by the brush. This prevents any other seed from hanging onto the side of the plate, but it allows the seed to pass right through this area right here for the corn seed. The kernel comes around and around, comes by the double eliminator. This is what we talked about earlier. This double eliminator, when it's in its down position, right now it's all the way up. See how it's all nice and smooth and it's free to travel. Normally on normal sized corn, you're gonna run the double eliminator in the middle position, which is right here. On really small corn, you're gonna run it in the all the way down position. You can see how it cambers down and causes this to come down and knock some of the kernels off. So in other words, when this disc, each of the kernels slide into these holes, you want only one kernel per divot. So if this double eliminator in here, it comes down and kind of covers the hole just a little bit. So you keep only one seed resting in each divot. When it's all the way in the off or up position, the eliminator is up here. Therefore, it allows you know, one or two to come into each of the holes and create doubles. So the idea is you want the double eliminator to be down just low enough to prevent doubles. So the idea is the bigger the seed, the higher up or the less the double eliminator is on. The smaller the seed, the lower the double eliminator is, or the more pressure you want put on there to knock the doubles off. Because obviously a big seed, it's harder to get two big seeds in this divot than it is two little seeds. So again, you adjust that by sliding it up and down, which causes that to go up or down depending on your seed size. Once you have it where you want it, to lock it in place, you camber over center and it locks it in place to keep it from moving up and down. Once the seed makes it by the double eliminator, one single seed per divot, it comes around. It loses vacuum about right here, and from here all the way to this brush here, there is no vacuum. So the seed immediately falls out with the assistance of the knockout wheel for corn or the scraper for soybeans, and it drops down into your seed tube into the trench. As you notice, the brush has a two-step system for corn. You'll notice the corn plate has one divot, you know, every half an inch or so. The bean plate has three of them for every quarter to half an inch. Because you're planting at so much higher population an acre, you need to have more seeds for every revolution of your plate. So you can see on the bean plate, this brush sits just like this. This brush allows the make contact on the inside here between the ridge and this first divot to keep any excess kernels from sliding by and accidentally dropping down into the tube, the seed tube, but it allows a gap in there to allow the soybeans to travel between the bristle and the plate. To remove the bristles, take a tiny little flat screwdriver, very carefully, insert the flat screwdriver in the top of the bracket, between the bracket and the brush. Wedge it in good and firm, and then you want to try to push it up and over. So you don't want to put too much pressure and break this plastic part off, but you want to wedge it, wedge the brush out. It's kind of delicate and you're going to break a few, it's just life. You break it or pop it out like this. Once you get it out, you can grab the other side and wiggle it out. Just as with the bean brush, the corn brush fits against the plate like this, and it allows more of a gap because corn kernels are a little bit bigger, and it rides right in here just like this, allowing a gap to allow the corn kernels to ride right in each of these individual divots to allow only one seed to go through at a time. Once you remove the corn brush, you move to the bean brush. Make sure you put the little notch to the inside right around the seal, and put the longer notch to the outside. Kind of wiggle it around the seal and just kind of wiggle with it and push you know, towards the inside, and it just pops into place. Kind of snugly wiggle with it. Make sure it's engaged with both of the dog ears clamps inside, and it's nice and firm. Just wiggle with it a little bit if it's in there firm, and it doesn't have to be tight. You just don't want it way hanging out. You want it even with the end down here behind this rubber seal. When you're done putting the brush on, you want to make very, very careful sure that this seal is still tight. Sometimes in the process of pulling the brush off or putting it in, you'll end up knocking this seal and it'll hang like this, or it'll get pushed under and it won't make a good seal. If you don't have a good seal, or if this falls off, you're not going to plant good because you don't have a seal to keep your vacuum line to keep the seed engaged with the individual divots. So just make sure it's popped back in place. It just slides over. It's got a lip all the way around and it just fits snugly in place. So just turn it a few times and make sure it's nicely engaged with the aluminum mainframe. These brushes here, vertical and at an angle, they stay in place for corn and beans. You should never have to replace or touch them. This plastic piece also stays regardless of corn and beans. This is what allows air to be pulled in to create a vacuum inside the vacuum system. Once the brush is firmly in place, your seal is in place, you'll take your bean plate, you'll slide it over, hold it in place with your hand or a plier. You grab the drive on the left side, grab the ear on this locking mechanism, pull it clockwise all the way up and over. It's spring loaded till it falls into a notch. You'll see there's a notch right there. It kind of just goes over center and lays right in the notch. You can see there's kind of a little dog ear sitting right here where it comes up against. Once it's in that sweet spot there, it's locked and there's spring pressure in here holding the plate tight and firmly to the housing. Once this plate is in place for soybeans, now you're going to move over to the vacuum housing. You'll notice the knockout wheel. We need to remove this knockout wheel because now we've got 3 instead of just 1 for corn. To remove the knockout wheel for corn, to replace it with a scraper for soybeans, take a small Phillips screwdriver. You'll notice there is a slot here where it's kind of offset on the knockout wheel with a spring. Slide your screwdriver in that offset. Of course, turn counterclockwise. You want to turn it, oh, you know, 3-4 revolutions, but you don't want to turn it so it comes out because they're a lot of fun to get threaded back in. Once you have the screw head loose, you'll pull the knockout wheel down to where the head is allowed to come free off the base of the bracket. You'll slide it over the head of the screw. You can see how this plastic pin just engages around the end of the knockout wheel base plate. Pull it out, and now your knockout wheel is free. You can see the knockout wheel has a spring on it to keep constant pressure to knock the corn kernels out as it goes around. After you remove the knockout wheel for corn, you want to replace it with the scraper for soybeans. This engages all 3 divots and keeps the kernels from hanging on and making more than 1 revolution around and giving you even spacing on your soybeans. So this scraper takes the place of the knockout wheel. So again, you're going to align that bottom hole on the bracket with that little notch there. You're going to slide the head over and then slide it up so it's firmly in place once the head gets tightened down. With the head firmly into the small groove here, Phillips screwdriver, clockwise of course, and tighten it down. And you're going to have to make several revolutions this time because the base plate of the scraper is much thinner than the base plate of the knockout wheel. So you'll probably make 10 or so revolutions to get her snugged up. And again, get her tight, but you don't have to strip out the heads because it is a very fine screw. As long as it's snug, it'll stay in place. Now you can see it's properly engaged down here on the plastic stud, and it's properly engaged behind the head of the screw on the scraper. Now you can see how this scraper keeps pressure against the plate as it's sliding by. That's it. We're done with the soybean changeover. Now all you need to do is again come down and to the side. You can see how you kind of work it into that hinge there till it slides into place. Don't force it, because obviously this is plastic and you can break it. So you got to get the angles just right and she'll slide right in. And now you see how this scraper engages the side here and keeps the kernels from going around a second time and sticking and wedging through. If you happen to have some real small seed, it can't wedge in there because the scraper's knocking it off on this side once the vacuum is dropped. So to close it back up, slide her into place. And of course, when you're done, you want to make sure it's nice and snug, because if you don't have a good vacuum seal here, if this isn't engaged back here at the hinge, or if this isn't tight, you're not going to have adequate planting because there's no vacuum. Lastly, you make sure that this elbow is engaged completely into the stud here. And then to double check and make sure that you don't have a loss in connection, follow the line back up to the tube and make sure you have a good connection on the elbow back here. I've seen a lot of times when you're done messing with this, you'll end up popping the elbow off up here and you'll get planting, and you'll wonder why a row isn't planting, because you don't have any vacuum pressure. So make sure the elbow's engaged and nothing's pinched and it's running in between the frame to allow the frame to move up and down as it goes in the ground and over the furrows and stuff. So make sure it's routed through, as well as your fertilizer line. Make sure that's routed where it can move freely and it's not going to get pinched, along with your electrical connection for your individual chute sensor. So you want to make sure that each seed chute sensor is free and it's not pinched or bound anywhere where it's going to get pinched. So you make sure everything's on and nice and snug. The latch is engaged. Your lid is shut. Lastly, after making sure everything is secure, you want to take the double eliminator and take it all the way off. So you take it all the way to the down position. That takes the double eliminator and pulls it up into the housing here. On soybeans, you're not concerned about having doubles. Your population is so high that it's not an issue to have doubles. With corn, it is, because you want absolute perfect spacing. So on soybeans, you always run the double eliminator all the way off. On this particular planter, we have a 15-inch inner plant. If a family farmer so decides he wants to run soybeans on 15-inch, then after replacing all the corn plates with soybean plates and the knockout wheels with scrapers and the brushes to the soybean, then you're going to want to take your inner plants and engage the Pro Drive. The heart of the Pro Drive is this orbital motor right here. Once the planter is engaged in the ground in the planting position, the computer automatically sends hydraulic fluid to each of these individual hydraulic motors. There is one on each wing and one on the main frame. From this motor, it is driven through the gears and the chain down to that hexagon shaft. That shaft runs the entire distance of each individual wing. From the hexagon rod, it is engaged through this drive, which engages the clutch, and engages the drive, which turns the plate, which drops the seed into the ground. This is your drive mechanism here to turn the actual plate inside. This here is the clutch mechanism, and this here is the Pro Drive coming off the shaft. Comes in, there's a cable inside here that twists inside this rubber housing. To engage the Pro Drive, when you're going from not using the 15-inch to using the 15-inch extra rows to plant 47, you're going to take this lock here. You can see it's got a lock position here on the top. You turn it half a revolution, you're going to see an unlock mark placed on the top of this lever. This will allow the Pro Drive to slide in. See how it's sliding in? It slides in all the way as far as you can push it, with one hand holding the back of it in. Take your lever and go from the unlocked to the locked position. Once you see the lock up here and you see how little is showing, now you know you're engaged and this unit is ready to plant. Now that we've converted the Pro Drive from disengaged to engaged on this side, lastly, you're going to need to drop this unit. You'll notice how this one of 24 is dropped in the down position, ready to plant. This one is tied up. Every other row is tied up because it was set up for corn. Now we're transitioning to soybeans. If you're going to go to 15-inch rows, you need to take this lever, go over center, cut the zip tie, and then we have a lever on the back of the planter. You'll take it out, it slides in, you'll lift the unit up, you'll drop this so that it falls down, and then with the lever, you'll just let it come down and it will engage just like the 24. And now you're ready to plant with this one as well. Just a side note, you'll notice this is an inflated airbag. This is a deflated airbag. When you run on 24 rows, you will deflate the 15s to keep the pressure off the frame and allow pressure just to go to the 24s. When you're going to do 15-inch rows, then you'll want to, on the front of the frame, right behind the tractor, you'll want to route that lever from off to on for 15-inch rows. That will inflate this bag through this airline and allow this bag to firm up just like the 24 are right now. After you're done transitioning from corn to soybeans, you'll obviously have these corn scrapers or brushes, excuse me, and you'll have the knockout wheels for corn. I would recommend having a plastic bag either on your side or right next to you, and put the brushes in one bag and the knockout wheels in the other, and make sure you account for 24 of them when you're done so that you don't end up losing them and have to try to find them if another family farmer wants to switch back over to corn again on a future move. On another note, while you're doing this transition from corn to soybeans or back soybeans to corn, I would highly recommend, if you have, 2-3 people, to get into kind of a factory mindset where one person does a particular task, like take off the vacuum cover, then the next guy puts the mini hopper pan down and empties the seed out of the hopper and sets the individual plate on top of another of the row units. Then another guy comes behind and removes the brush out, and then another guy comes back in, puts the other brush in, and you just kind of work it out as a team. But it's best if each person has a responsibility for one part, that way you don't end up losing any. And then I would recommend the team leader or someone who's going to take full responsibility kind of follow up at the end and make sure that all of the seals are in place, the right brush is in there, the right scraper or knockout wheel, and everything is just right and ready to go. And then of course when you put the lid back on after you tighten the plate in place, then you want to make sure that the seal is there and you have the vacuum line attached both at the top and at the bottom of the individual row unit, just so that you have kind of a plan and you kind of have a steady way, so one person's responsible for making sure it plants right. It's a whole lot more fun doing it right the first time than getting a hodgepodge and everybody's in a hurry just doing and grabbing. Just kind of get a factory mentality. It just works better.